Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I bring a new pair of words to share their stories with each other and you. You can find our past episodes and the occasional blog post on our website at lexitecture.com. Follow along with us on Twitter and Facebook at Lexitecture, and if you really like what we do, you can support the show at patreon.com/lexitecture.
This week it's time for another Wordstravaganza, where the words I'm talking about have been suggested by our wonderful listeners. Welcome to our fourth listener Wordstravaganza. You're stuck with me this time around, but fortunately I have lots of virtual company in the form of the many excellent suggestions and inquiries from our equally excellent listeners. If you have a burning question about a word, its origins, usage, or any of the other quirky little issues that arise from using the English language, feel free to hit us up on Facebook, either in the Word Nerd HQ group or on our page, on Twitter, Instagram, or by good old-fashioned email via our website lexitecture.com. You may have to wait a while for an answer, so if it's an etymological emergency, which definitely exists, then there's probably a number somewhere you can call. Since I've just done all the social media side of things, I should probably also mention that if you happen to appreciate what we do here and you're able to support it financially, we're also on patreon.com/Lexitecture. So head on over there to find out more and join our gang of awesome patrons if that's the sort of thing you like to do. We are insanely grateful for any and all support. Today, I'm starting with a waistcoat. It does flummox me that so many of the words that vary in meaning between the UK and the US are clothing words. I have no idea why this should be the case, but there we'll have it. I hear tell that across the Atlantic, waistcoats, or whiskets if that's your fancy, are known as vests, which in the UK are undergarments or sketchy fashion choices, as opposed to the fancy sleeveless underjacket that I've really only ever seen worn to weddings and other similar functions. Actually, I do recall my eldest brother wearing such a thing casually in the late 80s or early 90s. But if we want to further discuss sketchy fashion choices, those seem like good decades to go with. In any case, the reason I'm wondering about waistcoats is because of a request by Terry via email as to the etymology of the words treason and tradition. Terry wanted to know if these words were linked, and I quickly discovered that not only are they linked, they're so closely linked that there's a particular term to describe such intimately connected word pairs. That term is doublet, which, as you may know if you're into 14th century fashion, and who isn't, was a close-fitting body garment, with or without sleeves, worn by men from the 14th to the 18th centuries. The word doublet has its etymology in the Old French word double, double, plus the diminutive suffix et, meaning a little folded thing. Latin duplus, meaning twofold or twice as much, provides the origin of these pieces of the word. I suppose if you think about the construction of a waistcoat, the modern day ancestor of the doublet, the fabric is folded twice to create the garment. But the main reason I'm interested in doublets today is, following Terry's question, that the word also came to mean one of two things precisely alike or in some way identical. One of a pair or couple, or a duplicate copy. And in a philological sense, a doublet is one of two words in the same language representing the same ultimate word but differentiated in form, such as cloak and clock, or fashion and faction. One such example of a doublet can be found in the words treason and tradition. What the what now? If, like me, you're busy thinking that these two words do not in fact mean the same thing, I commend your attempt at accuracy, while at the same time retaining that smug sense of satisfaction that means I'm about to tell you that you're wrong. The OED states that the word is of multiple origins, part French and part Latin, and its first citation of the word is circa 1384 in the Wycliffite Bible. The Old French word tradition meant transmission, presentation, or handing over. From Latin traditionem, meaning a delivering up, a surrender, a handing down, or a giving up. Traditionem also meant a teaching or an instruction and a saying handed down from former times. Traditionem is a noun of action from the past participle stem of the verb tradere, to deliver or to hand over. This is formed by trans, meaning over, and dare, meaning to give. This comes from the PIE root do, do, to give. Well, the trans part of this word is probably one of English's best known etymological roots. It comes from a PIE root tere, T-E-R-E, meaning cross over, pass through, or overcome. Its cognates include words such as avatar, caravanserai, which was an eastern inn with a large central court catering to caravans, nectar, nostril, a Lexitecture favourite, truncate and trunk, as well as many others. The do PIE root gives us English words like donor, dose, antidote and anecdote, dowry, mandate and samizdat. Interestingly, you might be thinking, like I did, that the Latin tradere gives us the English word trade, since delivering and handing over is pretty much what trade consists of. However, trade comes from the Germanic trad, meaning a track or course, probably describing the path of a ship delivering goods. This word is cognate with Old English treadan, which gives us the English word tread, as in to walk along a path. There's a great post on mashedradish.com that looks at this in more detail. I highly recommend checking it out. But how does handing down a tradition get us into the murky world of treason? If you take a closer look at the Latin word traditionem, we recall its meaning: a delivering up, a surrender, a handing down, or a giving up. It's the giving up part that leads us into treasonous waters. Treason, the action of betraying, or betrayal of the trust undertaken by or reposed in anyone, a breach of faith or a treacherous action, is first cited in the OED around 1225 and perhaps as early as 1200, which just goes to show that people have been untrustworthy dicks for a really long time. But it's the delivering up part that links these doublet words. While traditions are about handing down beliefs, rituals, heirlooms or whatever, treason is about handing over stuff or people to your enemies. The word traditor means the ones who handed over, and Wikipedia tells us that it refers to bishops and other Christians who turned over sacred scriptures or betrayed their fellow Christians to the Roman authorities under threat of persecution. This word is of course cognate with traitor, as in one who commits treason. So depending on how you look at it, you're either preserving the good old ways or betraying everything you stand for. There are tons of doublet pairs, and even triplets in English, including one which features a word that Amy in New Zealand was curious enough to email us about. Thanks. The doublet word here is think, and both words are ultimately thought to be from the PIE root tong, T-O-N-G, meaning to think or feel. Rather delightfully, to thank is to send good thoughts to a person. But from 1550, it was also used ironically to blame someone, as in, I'll thank you to mind your own business. And from 1703, people were thanking each other for nothing. This is why we can't have nice things, English speakers. Damn your snark. Another English doublet that made me very happy consists of the words science and shit, which are both ultimately from the PIE root skei, S-K-E-I, meaning to cut or split apart. While science is from Latin scire, to know, which Etymonline reckons probably originally meant to separate one thing from another, or to distinguish, shit is Germanic, from Proto-Germanic skit, also meaning to cut or split, which gave us Old English skitan, believed to refer to the splitting off or separating from the body of its waste. Interestingly, the word excrement has the same meaning, with its root, excernere, meaning to separate. It amuses me no end that the word scotology, meaning the science of or study of excrement, has such a clear connection to the original PIE root that gives us both words. And with all this shit everywhere, someone should really call a plumber. Scientists are all very well, but when the excrement has been separated from the enclosed vessels we're used to keeping it in, the true heroes are the folks that can get it back into the pipes where it belongs. Long-time listener Erin Bell was curious about the origins of plumbing and plumbers. And it does seem very difficult to separate these words from science, given that the Latin word plumbum gives us both of these words. And since plumbum, which is incredibly fun to say, means lead. This is why lead's symbol in the periodic table is PB, short for plumbum. I'm going to take every opportunity to say this word, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. The profession of plumbing, with its connection to the lead pipes that were originally used to keep the water and the worst stuff off the floor, is much younger than the entry of the word plumb into the English language. The OED first cites the noun plumb circa 1400, where it meant a ball or piece of lead or other dense substance attached to a plumb line or quadrant for determining the vertical. This time, the lead gives us not only the name of the plumb line meaning a vertical hanging thing, but also the concept of verticality. The phrase out of plumb from 1748 has absolutely nothing to do with lead, but referred to something that was out of its vertical alignment, and then figuratively to something that was a bit off. The other name for a piece of lead attached to a line, used for finding the depth of water, was a plummet, which actually predates plumb, first cited in 1384, but what's 16 years in etymological terms? This tool, which plopped into deep water, no doubt with a very pleasing sound, eventually led in 1845 to the word referring to anything that dropped or fell rapidly. In fact, the earliest senses of the verb to plumb referred to this rapid drop, with the OED's first citation, the Wycliffite Bible once again in roughly 1425, proclaiming that their heartes been so heavy that they plumben doon to hell. The next sense of the word refers to the action of measuring the depth of water using a plumb or plummet, and it's not until 1859 that we find a reference to plumbing as we would now describe it. The next sense of the word refers to the action of measuring the depth of water using a plumb or plummet. And it's not until 1859 that we find a reference to plumbing as we would now describe it. The noble profession practiced by Mario, Luigi, and many other absolute legends across the globe. If you're wondering why I love plumbers so much, you've clearly never experienced life without a functioning toilet. There are lots of other lovely usages of the word plumb between these two citations, such as the figurative senses of both plummeting and measuring verticality or rightness, and many obsolete usages, such as the practice of sealing your luggage with lead in preparation for a long journey, which seems a bit extreme to me and would presumably make your luggage really heavy. Nicole O'Hara on Facebook was curious to learn more about homonyms, particularly lead and lead. I'd like to add to that pairing one of my most particular pet peeves, which is when people use the homophone lead, L-E-A-D, as the past form of lead, which is of course lead spelled L-E-D, as in they led me up the garden path. Sometimes the internet makes me doubt that LED lead even exists anymore, because the mistaken use of L-E-A-D is so common. I know. Language is alive and ever-changing, and it's pointless getting hung up on these things. But also, I feel sorry for LED lead, because I don't want it falling out of usage just because people don't know how to spell. Nicole wanted to know whether the homonyms led, lead were cognates or coincidence. And in this particular case, it's coincidence all the way. Lead, the verb, comes from Old English ledan, a form of the verb lithan, meaning to travel. Ledan means cause to go with oneself, march at the head of, go before as a guide, accompany and show the way, carry on, sprout forth, bring forth, or to pass one's life. This verb originates via various Germanic languages from the PIE root leit, L-E-I-T, meaning to go, or to go away or to die. It is cognate with words like livelihood, load, both L-O-A-D and L-O-D-E, and lithe, L-I-T-H-E, the midsummer hobbit holiday in Lord of the Rings. Let, as in plumbum, that word again, originates from a Germanic word lot, which is of uncertain origin. Interestingly, many of the various Germanic forms which are ancestors of the English word lead refer to plummets or plums. The idea that the heaviest of the base metals could be separated from its purpose, measuring the depth of water, or finding a vertical line, seems impossible, linguistically speaking. Lead has always been for plumbing. The elephant in the room when it comes to lead, however, particularly when we think about water pipes, is that lead is super poisonous. This is a word that Herb Nesbitt, a previous Wordstravaganza contributor, asked us about. Poison is in fact another doublet, this time of potion, and both are ultimately from the PIE root poi, P-O-I, to drink, as in the potent potables we discussed in our last episode, Lieutenant Beer. It's really interesting that both of these words seem to have originated as simple drinks, but both have gathered the idea of harm, malice, or magic throughout the centuries. The OED lists the first citation of poison around 1225 with the same definition that we use today. My favourite thing that I've learned while researching this word is the etymology for a word that I very much love, but have never thought to investigate before. Etymonline, in the entry for poison, mentions that the Old English word for poison was ator, A-T-O-R, as in attercop. Attercop, the wonderful word that I love so much, is an old-fashioned name for a spider. And I love it a little bit more now that I know its etymology, because attercop literally means poison head. The cop part of attercop gives us the cob part of cobweb, and J.R.R. Tolkien was enough of a language nerd, by which I mean Professor of Anglo-Saxon, that he incorporated this very old-fashioned, almost dead usage of the word cop as a standalone word for spider in The Hobbit. So, if the lead poisoning doesn't get you, the attercops probably will. At which point, you may need a hearse to transport you to your funeral. JT Perkin on Twitter wanted to know if there was any connection between the funeral cars and rehearsing, and I'm delighted to say that there is. The younger word is rehearse, first cited around 1300, and meaning to give an account or description of something, to relate, report, narrate, tell, or to describe at length. The OED describes the word as a borrowing from French, with Old French rehearsier, meaning to repeat. In around 1382, the Wycliffite Bible yet again, the now archaic sense of reciting a poem, a prayer, or another piece of writing, especially before an audience, or to read aloud or declaim from memory, takes us closer to the idea of rehearsing as actors rehearse, with this sense first cited in 1579 or 1580. I was surprised by the many different definitions of this word. I'd only ever thought about it in the sense that actors use it, but there are many other shades of meaning, all relating to the idea of repetition or speaking aloud. The word is, of course, comprised of the prefix re and the word hearse, a French word meaning to harrow, which is first cited in English in 1287. The 1287 citation from the Synod of Exeter isn't referring to ploughing, but instead to a triangular frame used to carry candles during Holy Week and Easter services. The shape, which resembled an ancient harrow, is what gives it its name. In 1291, we see a citation for the same word, this time referring to an elaborate framework originally intended to carry a large number of lighted tapers and other decorations over the bier or coffin while placed in the church at the funerals of distinguished persons. By 1552, it has become a permanent framework of iron or other metal fixed over a tomb to support rich coverings or palls, often adapted to carry lighted tapers. By 1566, it's a light framework of wood used to support the pall over the body at funerals. It fitted onto the parish bier and was probably adapted to carry lighted tapers. And by 1575, a hearse has become a temple-shaped structure of wood used in royal and noble funerals, after the earlier kind, the elaborate candle frame, went out of use. It was decorated with banners, heraldic devices and lighted candles, and it was customary for friends to pin short poems or epitaphs upon it. Various other senses relating to funerals, a body, a tomb, a pallcloth, are now largely obsolete, but the funerary correction seems to have been very clear. It's not until 1560 that the modern usage first appears, describing a hearse and horse hung about with many trappings. The harrow, after which the word is named, was a large rake for breaking up soil, and gives that repetitive shade to the Latin and French words which give us rehearse, which literally means to rake over again. In other words, to repeat. At the risk of repeating myself, I want to say thank you to all of the contributors to today's Wordstravaganza, and to all the many contributors whose words we haven't investigated yet. It was really difficult to choose which suggestions to look at in this episode, and I look forward to raking up origins, facts and speculations about the others. Please, 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 yet more repetition, get in touch if you'd like to feature in future listener-led episodes, because I've had tremendous fun putting this one together. I hope you enjoy it as much as I have.
And that's it for another episode of Lexitecture. To get in touch with us about something you heard in this episode, you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can also follow along and talk to us at Lexitecture on Facebook and Twitter, and at Lexitecture Podcast on Instagram. For back episodes and the occasional blog post, visit us at lexitecture.com. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.